Not during that incident in Sao Paulo when 3 men with machetes had cornered them in an alley. But here, on a rain-slicked corner of Seattle's Pioneer Square, the German shepherd pressed his nose against the car window and produced that sound again, that broken, pleading note. "What is it, boy?" The girl couldn't have been older than 23, maybe younger. Hard to tell when someone's face had been weathered by sleeping under bridges and eating from dumpsters. She held her sign at an angle, hungry. Anything helps. God bless. Damien's driver, Marcus, cleared his throat. "Sir, we're going to be late for the board meeting. The Shanghai investors—" "Stop the car, sir." I said, "Stop the car, Marcus." The black Escalade pulled to the curb. Zeus was already pawing at the door handle, something he'd never done before. Damien opened the door, and the dog bolted out, nearly dragging him onto the wet pavement. "Zeus! Heel!" The command meant nothing. 85 pounds of trained protection dog sprinted toward a homeless woman like she was hiding the last bone on earth. And then something impossible happened. The girl dropped her sign, her hands flew to her mouth, and she whispered a word that hadn't been spoken to Damien in 22 years. "D!" The world tilted. Seattle's gray skyline blurred into watercolor. Damien's knees buckled, but he caught himself on a parking meter, its cold metal biting into his palm. He knew those eyes. He'd seen them every night in his dreams since he was 8 years old, brown with flecks of gold, like autumn leaves drowning in honey. Amara? The homeless woman, his sister, his lost sister, the ghost who haunted every Christmas morning and every birthday candle, collapsed onto the sidewalk and buried her face in Zeus's fur. The dog stood perfectly still, letting her soak his coat with tears. Damien couldn't move. His body had forgotten how. Let me tell you how we arrived at this moment. Let me tell you about the night I became a murderer of memories, and how Zeus brought my sister back from the dead. I was 8 years old the last time I saw Amara. She was 6. Our parents had brought us from Lagos to Chicago because our father, Emmanuel Okonkwo, had received a fellowship at Northwestern University. He was going to change the world, he said. He was going to cure diseases. He was going to make us proud. What he actually did was die in a car accident on Interstate 94 during a snowstorm 3 months after we arrived. Our mother, Adaiz, did not survive the grief. She survived the accident. She was in the passenger seat and walked away with a fractured wrist and 17 stitches across her forehead. But grief has a way of killing you slowly, doesn't it? Like a vine growing around your heart, squeezing a little tighter each day until there's no room left for blood to flow. She stopped cooking. Then she stopped cleaning. Then she stopped speaking. I remember the morning the social workers came, a Tuesday in March. Amara was playing with a doll our grandmother had sent from Nigeria, a cloth doll with button eyes and yarn hair the color of midnight. I was trying to make oatmeal on the stove because Mother hadn't left her bedroom in 4 days. 3 women in gray suits knocked on our door. Behind them stood a police officer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Damien, Amara, we're here to help you." Help. That word became a curse in our vocabulary. They separated us at the Department of Children and Family Services. Amara went into one room. I went into another. They asked me questions I didn't understand. They made phone calls in hushed voices. They frowned at clipboards and shook their heads. When I came out, Amara was gone. "Where's my sister?" The social worker, I still remember her name, Helen Krakowski, because I wrote it down and promised myself I would find her one day and ask her why. Helen Krakowski knelt beside me and placed a hand on my shoulder. "She's been placed with a family, sweetie, a nice family that's going to take good care of her." "But I take care of her. I'm her brother." "I know, honey, but you're going to a different family. They have a nice room for you and—" No. I don't remember much of what happened next. I know I ran. I know someone caught me in the parking lot. I know I screamed Amara's name until my voice cracked and dissolved into nothing but breath. They gave me to a family named Patterson, Mark and Linda Patterson, who lived in a brick house in Oak Park with a golden retriever named Biscuit, and 2 biological sons who made it clear from day one that I was not welcome. I never saw Amara again. Until today. The Escalade's interior smelled like coffee and leather. Damien had wrapped his jacket around Amara's shoulders. She sat across from him in the back seat, her legs pulled up to her chest, her eyes fixed on some point beyond the tinted windows. Zeus had positioned himself between them, his head resting on Amara's knee. The dog had not stopped touching her since the moment they found each other. "Amara," Damien started. His voice sounded foreign, like someone else was using his vocal cords. "That's not my name anymore." The words landed like stones in water. "What do you mean? I go by River now. Have for years." She finally turned to look at him. Up close, he could see the geography of her suffering, the thin white scar bisecting her left eyebrow, the hollows beneath her cheekbones, the raw skin around her wrists where she'd been scratching at herself. "Amara died a long time ago." "Don't say that." "It's true, Dee. You don't know what—" She stopped. Her jaw tightened. "Where are you taking me?" "My apartment. You need food, a shower, clean clothes, a doctor, probably." "I don't need a doctor. River." The name felt wrong in his mouth, like speaking underwater. "Your feet are bleeding." She looked down. The blood had soaked through her thin socks and was staining the Escalade's cream carpet. She hadn't noticed. "Oh," she said, "nothing more." Marcus kept his eyes on the road. Damien could see the driver's knuckles, white against the steering wheel. Later, he would have to explain to his assistant why he'd missed the most important board meeting in the company's history. Later, he would have to answer 473 emails marked urgent. Later. Right now, the only thing that mattered was the ghost sitting across from him, wearing his jacket-like armor. They drove in silence through Seattle's downtown corridor. Outside, people hurried along sidewalks with umbrellas and purpose. None of them knew that inside this black vehicle, time had folded in on itself like origami. River pressed her forehead against the window. Her breath fogged the glass. "You got rich?" It wasn't a question. "I got lucky." "No." She almost smiled. Almost. "I read about you. In the library, when they let me use the computers, Damien Okonkwo, the security prodigy. Former SEAL turned tech entrepreneur. Net worth estimated at $2.3 billion. The almost smile vanished. "You didn't look for me." The accusation hit him like a bullet to the chest. "I did look for you. I spent years—" "Then why didn't you find me?" He had no answer, because the truth was too ugly to speak aloud. The truth was that he had looked, yes, with all the resources a wealthy man could command: private investigators, DNA databases, facial recognition software from his own company. But he had started too late. 20 years too late. The first decade after their separation, he'd had nothing. A foster family that treated him like a burden, a childhood spent dreaming of escape. He'd joined the Navy at 18, partly for structure, partly to become someone strong enough to find his sister. By the time he had money and power and tools, the trail had gone cold. Amara Okonkwo had vanished into the American foster system like a raindrop into the ocean. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that she hadn't vanished at all. She'd been destroyed piece by piece in homes that made the Patterson house look like paradise. But that story would come later. First, there was the moment when the elevator opened onto Damien's penthouse, and River, Amara, saw how her brother lived. The apartment took up the entire 47th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, a kitchen that could serve a restaurant, art on the walls that cost more than most people's houses, a view of Puget Sound that looked like a painting. River stood in the center of the living room, dripping rainwater onto a Persian rug that had been woven by hand in Isfahan over 200 years ago. She turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. "This is disgusting." Damien blinked. "What?" "All of this." She gestured at the space, the opulence, the absurd beauty of extreme wealth. "One person lives here?" "And Zeus." She laughed. The sound was harsh, bitter, nothing like the giggles he remembered from their childhood. "Right. You and your dog in a palace. Meanwhile, I spent 6 months living in a tent under the Spokane Street Bridge. Amara. River. Find River. I didn't know where you were. I swear to you, if I had known—" "You would have what? Sent money? Hired someone to check on me? Fix me with your billions?" She was crying now, but her voice didn't waver. "You can't fix 22 years, Dee. You can't buy back time." Zeus whined and pressed himself against her leg. She looked down at the dog, and something in her face softened. "Why does he do that? He's been glued to me since we met." Damien felt the weight of a story he'd never intended to tell. Zeus was trained by a woman named Sarah Marchetti. She was a K-9 handler with Seattle police. 4 years ago, she was my— He stopped, started again. "She was important to me. What happened to her? Cancer, ovarian, from diagnosis to death in 9 months. He sat down on the nearest sofa because his legs had started to tremble. She asked me to take Zeus, said he was special, said he could sense things. Sense what? Pain, loss, broken people. He met his sister's eyes. Sarah believed dogs could smell grief. Something about the chemicals our bodies release when we're suffering. She said Zeus was born for it. That's why she trained him for search and rescue instead of regular police work. He doesn't find criminals. He finds survivors." River lowered herself to the floor. Zeus immediately climbed into her lap, which should have been impossible. He was far too large, but somehow the dog made it work. She wrapped her arms around him and pressed her face into his neck. "Good boy," she whispered. "Good boy." Damien watched them, his lost sister, his borrowed dog, 2 survivors who had found each other. "Will you stay?" he asked. "Why, please, just for tonight. Let me feed you. Let me help." "I don't want your help." "I know. But Zeus does. Look at him. He won't leave you." She looked down at the dog. He looked up at her with those amber eyes that had seen so much. "One night," she said finally, "and then I disappear again." "Okay." It was a lie, of course. Damien had no intention of letting her disappear. But he'd learned something in business. Sometimes you have to accept a small victory to win the war. The shower ran for 47 minutes. Damien sat outside the bathroom door the entire time, listening, terrified that she might collapse or cut herself or simply dissolve down the drain like soap bubbles. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a bathrobe that could have fit 3 of her, her skin had returned to something like its natural color. She looked younger, with the grime washed away, and somehow older, as if cleaning her body had exposed how exhausted her soul truly was. He'd laid out clothes on the bed, sweatpants, a soft t-shirt, warm socks. She stared at them like they might bite. "These are women's clothes. I keep some things here, for guests." Her eyes narrowed. "What kind of guests?" "Not those kinds of guests." He felt heat rise to his face. "There's a charity I support. They help homeless women transition to stable housing. Sometimes I meet with clients here, and I keep some basics on hand." She considered this. Then she laughed. "Genuinely this time." "You're such a liar." "I'm not lying." "No, I mean—" She shook her head. "You were always the worst liar, Dee, even when we were kids. Remember when you broke Mama's vase? The blue one? You tried to blame it on the wind. The window was open. It was January. And just like that, for one crystalline moment, they were children again. Standing in their parents' apartment in Chicago, surrounded by the smell of jollof rice and the sound of their father's music, before the accident, before the grief, before everything shattered. The moment passed. River's face closed like a door. "I'll get dressed," she said. "Is there food?" "I'll order something. What do you want?" "Anything, everything." She paused at the bedroom door. "I haven't eaten in 3 days." The words were casual, thrown over her shoulder like spare change, but they hit Damien harder than any punch he'd ever taken. 3 days. His sister hadn't eaten in 3 days while he'd been complaining about the quality of airplane Wi-Fi on his private jet. He called a restaurant. He ordered too much, pad thai and sushi and pizza and Chinese and Ethiopian and French and Italian, because he didn't know what she liked anymore. Because he didn't know anything about her anymore. 22 years. What had happened in 22 years? He was about to find out. They sat on the floor because River said the dining table made her uncomfortable. Zeus positioned himself between them like a furry referee. The food spread out like a carpet of abundance, enough to feed a dozen people. River ate slowly at first, then faster, then had to stop because her stomach cramped from the sudden influx of nutrition. Damien watched her and tried not to cry and failed. "Tell me," he said when she finally pushed away from the remnants of a margarita pizza. "Tell me what happened to you. You don't want to know. I do." "No, Dee, you want to know the Disney version, the one where the foster families were hard, but I overcame and now I'm scrappy and resilient. And isn't that wonderful?" She grabbed a napkin and wiped her mouth. Her hands were shaking. "That's not what happened." "Then tell me what did happen." She was quiet for a long time. Zeus shifted his head from her lap to her feet, providing a different kind of comfort. "Fine," she said at last, "but after I tell you, you'll look at me differently, and I'll never be able to undo that. Nothing could change how I—" "Shut up. Just shut up and listen." He shut up. "The first family they placed me with was the Hendersons. Bob and Mary Henderson from Naperville. They had a nice house. A dog, not like Zeus, a little yappy thing that bit everyone. 2 spare bedrooms and a sign on their wall that said, 'Family is everything.' For the first month I thought I'd been lucky. Mary made pancakes on Saturdays. Bob taught me how to ride a bike. They asked about you sometimes. My brother? Where was he? Did I miss him? I cried, and they held me, and I thought, maybe this is okay. Maybe I can survive this." Then Mary got pregnant. Suddenly the spare bedroom wasn't spare anymore. Suddenly there wasn't enough money, enough time, enough love. They sent me back to DCFS with a note that said, "Not the right fit." Muck, that's the phrase they use, you know. Not the right fit. Like we're shoes, like we're something you try on and return if they don't match your outfit. The second family was worse, the Castellanos. Single father, 2 biological kids. He didn't hit me, not at first, but his sons did. Every day after school, in the basement where no one could hear. I told the social worker. You know what she said? "Boys will be boys. They're just adjusting to the new dynamic." When I showed up to school with a broken wrist, they finally moved me, but the damage was done. I'd learned the first lesson of the system. No one believes you. No one protects you. You protect yourself, or you break. I went through 7 more families over the next 4 years. Some were fine. Most were not. By the time I was 10, I'd learned to keep a bag packed under my bed, because I never knew when the door would open, and a voice would say, "Time to go." When I was 12, they placed me with a man named Richard Kane. She stopped. Her whole body went rigid. Zeus lifted his head and made a sound in the back of his throat. Not a growl, not quite, but something protective. "You don't have to tell me," Damien said. "Yes, I do." Her voice had flattened, gone clinical. Richard Kane was a retired teacher. Widower. He lived in a house at the end of a cul-de-sac in Rockford. The neighbors called him a saint. He took in difficult children, they said, the ones nobody else wanted. You can probably guess what happened. You can probably imagine. I won't give you the details because the details live inside me like splinters, and I've spent 20 years trying not to pick at them. I stayed with Richard Kane for 18 months. When I finally ran away, I was 14 years old and weighed 87 pounds. I made it to Chicago, lived on the streets for a while, got picked up by a pimp who called himself Daddy Blue. Amara. Damien's voice cracked. "Don't interrupt me. If I stop now, I'll never start again." Daddy Blue was bad, but he was a businessman. He kept his girls alive because dead girls don't make money. When I got pregnant at 15, he took me to a clinic. When I tried to run, he broke my nose. I finally got away when I was 17, walked into a police station covered in bruises, Gave them everything I had on Daddy Blue's operation. They arrested him. I testified. He went to prison. His friends came after me. I spent the next 6 years running. New city every few months. New name every year. I was Amy in Portland, Jasmine in Denver, River in Seattle. I stayed River because it felt right. Rivers keep moving. Rivers don't stop. I tried to get clean, get sober, get straight. Sometimes it worked for a while. A job here, an apartment there, but the past catches up. The nightmares come back. And then you're drinking to sleep, and then you're using to feel nothing, and then you're back on the street with a cardboard sign and no shoes. She took a breath, the first real breath she'd taken since she started talking. That's what happened to me, Dee. That's the truth. Now look at me and tell me you don't see a stranger. Damien looked at her. He saw the scars. He saw the hardness. He saw the survival etched into every line of her face. But underneath all of it, he saw his little sister, the girl who used to make him dance to their father's records, the girl who believed in fairies until she was 7 because he told her they lived in the garden, the girl who, on the night before the accident, had crawled into his bed during a thunderstorm and whispered, "Dee, promise you'll never leave me." He had promised. He had broken that promise. "I see you," he said. "I see Amara. I told you, you're not River. River is a name you took because you had to survive. But underneath, you're still her. You're still my sister." That girl died. No. He reached across the food and the distance and the 22 years and took her hand. She flinched but didn't pull away. She didn't die. She got buried. There's a difference. Zeus barked once, sharp, decisive, as if confirming. River looked at the dog, then at her brother. Then at the skyline beyond the windows where Seattle's lights glittered like promises. "I don't know how to be her anymore," she whispered. "I don't know how to be anything except broken. Then we'll learn together. I'm broken too. You, the billionaire, the seal, what could possibly have broken you?" And so Damien told his own story, not the version from the Forbes profiles or the TED Talks, the real one, the nightmares that still woke him at 3 a.m, the faces of people he'd killed in service to his country, necessary kills, justified kills, but kills nonetheless, the women he'd pushed away because he couldn't let anyone get close enough to leave, the therapy sessions and the medications, and the one terrible night when he'd held a loaded gun in his hands and thought, "What's the point?" "Zeus found me," he said, "that night with the gun. He wasn't even mine yet. Sarah was still alive, and I was just visiting. But he walked into the room where I was sitting in the dark, and he put his head on my knee, and he just stayed all night until the sun came up and I couldn't do it anymore." River's grip tightened on his hand. "He's a good dog. He's a miracle." "Do you think—" She stopped, tried again. "Do you think he found me on purpose today? Not by accident, but because he knew. I think Zeus knows things we don't understand. I think Sarah trained something into him that goes beyond biology. I think he smells suffering the way other dogs smell drugs or cadavers. And he brought you to me." "No." Damien smiled for the first time in hours. "He brought me to my sister. There's a difference." They stayed up until 4 a.m, not talking the whole time, sometimes just sitting, watching the city sleep, letting Zeus snore between them, but talking enough, sharing enough, building a bridge across the chasm. Around dawn, River fell asleep on the couch. Damien covered her with a blanket and sat in the armchair across from her, watching her breathe. Zeus pattered over and rested his head on Damien's knee. Those amber eyes, full of ancient knowing, looked up at him. "Thank you," Damien whispered. The dog's tail wagged once. Then he returned to his post beside River, guarding her sleep like a sentinel. The next morning, Damien's phone exploded with messages. The board meeting, the Shanghai investors, the urgent matters that had seemed so important 24 hours ago. He turned off the phone. River found him in the kitchen, attempting to make Nigerian-style eggs the way their mother used to. The attempt was failing miserably. "You're burning them?" I know. Move. She shouldered him aside and took the spatula. Her movements were efficient, practiced. You learn to cook on the streets or you starve. Where did you learn? There was a woman, homeless, like me. She used to be a chef before the drugs. She taught me things. What happened to her? River didn't answer. She didn't need to. They ate the eggs in silence. Zeus got his own portion, which he devoured in approximately 4 seconds. What happens now? River asked when the plates were empty. Whatever you want. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Damien set down his fork. You can stay here forever. You can leave tonight. You can go anywhere in the world and I'll pay for it. You can hate me, blame me, never speak to me again. Whatever you need, River. Whatever helps you survive. I've been surviving for 22 years. I'm tired of surviving. Then don't survive. Live. She laughed that harsh laugh again. Easy for you to say. No, it's not. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something he'd been carrying for 15 years. A photograph, worn and creased and faded. 2 children standing in front of a Christmas tree, their arms around each other. River took the photograph. Her hands trembled. Where did you get this? I found it. After I got out of the system. I went back to Chicago, found the storage unit where they'd kept our parents' things. Most of it was gone, sold to pay debts. But this was in a box of old pictures. I've carried it every day since. She touched the image of her younger self. The girl who believed in fairies? I look happy. You were happy. We both were. That was a different life. It was our life. And it can be our life again. Different, yes, changed, but ours. Zeus barked and bounded toward the window. Outside, the sun had broken through Seattle's eternal clouds, painting the city in shades of gold. River stood and walked to the window. Damien followed. They stood side by side, watching light spill across the water. I need to tell you something, she said. Okay. That night, when they took me away, I tried to run, too. Damien froze. What? The social worker, the one who put me in that room while they interviewed you, she left for 5 minutes. I was supposed to stay put, but I saw the door to your room and I tried to run to you. What happened? She caught me, held me down, told me I was being difficult. That's the word she used, difficult. River pressed her palm against the glass. I screamed your name, Dee, over and over. Didn't you hear me? His legs gave out. He sank to the floor, his back against the window. I heard, he whispered. I heard you screaming. They told me it was another child, a different room. They said, his voice broke. They said you were already gone. They lied. They lied. 22 years of blame. 22 years of thinking he'd failed to protect her, to fight hard enough, to be enough. And now, this, the truth. They had both fought. They had both screamed. And the system had separated them anyway. River sat down beside him. For the first time since they'd found each other, she was the one who reached out. Her hand, scarred and calloused and strong, found his. It wasn't your fault, Dee. It wasn't yours either. I know, I've always known. I just needed to hear you say it. Zeus wedged himself between them, forcing both humans to make room for his bulk. His tail thumped against the floor once, twice, 3 times. Heartbeats. That's what it sounded like. 3 heartbeats, syncopated, but together. I want to try, River said. Try what? Living, not surviving. Actually living. She leaned her head against his shoulder, but I don't know how. Neither do I. So we're both clueless. Completely. That's comforting. They sat there as the sun climbed higher, as Seattle woke up around them, as the world continued turning without caring about their pain or their reunion or their hope. But hope was there, fragile as a bird's wing, fierce as a dog's loyalty, real. It would take years to rebuild what had been destroyed. There would be therapy and setbacks and dark nights when the past came roaring back. There would be moments when River disappeared into herself and Damien couldn't reach her, moments when his own demons pulled him under. But there would also be this, two siblings, reunited by chance and a miraculous dog, learning to love each other again. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. "Hey, Dee?" "Yeah?" "Can we get pancakes?" "I really want pancakes," he laughed. A real laugh, one that surprised him. "Anything you want, Amara, anything you want." She smiled, small, fragile, true. "River," she corrected. "But maybe someday." Amara again. "Okay," he said. "Okay." Zeus barked his approval. And somewhere in the city, a church bell began to ring, calling the faithful to pray. Neither Damien nor River was religious anymore. Too much had happened. Too many prayers had gone unanswered. But in that moment, as the bells echoed across the water, it felt like something bigger than coincidence was at work. Something like grace. They got their pancakes. They ate too much. They talked about nothing and everything. And when the check came, River insisted on paying. "With what money?" Damien asked. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled $20 bill. "A man gave this to me yesterday, right before you showed up. He said, 'Get something warm to eat.' I was going to save it, but—" She shrugged. "I think this counts as warm." Damien stared at the bill. "That's not enough to cover—" "I know, but let me pay my part, please." He understood. This was about dignity, about reclaiming something that had been stripped away. "Okay." He let her put down the 20. He covered the rest. They walked out into the Seattle morning, a billionaire CEO, and his formerly homeless sister, and a German shepherd who had seen too much and loved too hard. They walked along the waterfront. Zeus stopped to investigate every seagull, every trash can, every interesting smell. River laughed at his antics, really laughed, the sound breaking through her walls like sunlight through clouds. "What are you going to tell people?" she asked. "About me?" "The truth. That my sister was lost and now she's found." "They'll have questions. Let them ask. I don't care. Your investors can invest somewhere else if they don't like it." She stopped walking, turned to face him. For a long moment she just looked at him, studied him as if memorizing his features. "You're different than I expected." "How so?" "I thought you'd be cold. Rich people are usually cold. Distant. But you're—" She searched for the word. "You're still Dee. Underneath everything, you're still my big brother. I never stopped being your brother. I just lost you for a while. For 22 years. A long while." She reached up and touched his face. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw, the same jaw their father had, the same jaw their children would have, if they ever had children. "I forgive you," she said. "For what?" "For not finding me sooner, for having this life while I had mine, for being okay when I wasn't. I forgive all of it." His eyes burned. "I don't deserve—" "I know, that's why it's called forgiveness." She pulled him into a hug, the first hug they'd shared in 2 decades. It was awkward at first. They'd both forgotten how to fit together, but then something clicked, some muscle memory from childhood. And they held each other while Seattle moved around them, while strangers walked past without knowing they were witnessing a miracle, while Zeus sat at their feet and guarded them from a world that had already taken so much. When they finally let go, River wiped her eyes. "So, what now?" "Now?" Damien smiled. "Now we go home." "Home," she repeated, like she was tasting the word, testing its weight. "Home." They walked back to the penthouse together. Zeus bounded ahead, then circled back, then bounded ahead again, a shepherd herding his flock. That night River slept in the guest room. Damien stayed awake, listening to the city, thinking about everything they'd lost and everything they might still find. Around midnight his door opened. River stood in the doorway, clutching that old cloth doll, the one with button eyes and yarn hair. Damien had found it in the storage unit, too, and he'd kept it all these years without knowing why. "Can I sleep in here tonight?" she asked, "like we used to, during thunderstorms?" "It's not storming." "I know, but I'm scared anyway. Come in." She climbed onto the bed. Zeus jumped up too, settling between them. 3 broken creatures seeking warmth. "Dee?" "Yeah?" "Promise you'll never leave me." The same words, the same plea, the same child underneath the woman's voice. "I promise." This time, he would keep it. Outside, the stars emerged from behind the clouds. Seattle's lights dimmed slightly, as if in deference to something sacred. And in a penthouse on the 47th floor, a brother and sister fell asleep side by side, their hands touching, their dog watching over them. The truth had broken them, but the truth had also set them free. And Zeus, guardian of broken hearts, kept his vigil until dawn. The girl had no shoes. That was the first thing Zeus noticed, not her face, not the cardboard sign she clutched against her chest like a shield. The dog's ears flattened and a low whine escaped his throat. Damien Okonkwo set down his phone. In 12 years of building Sentinel security from a garage startup to a billion-dollar enterprise, he had learned to trust 2 things, data and his dog. Zeus never whined, not during bomb threats,